Howdy. Well, let me get these statistics out of my head first. 87% of the deaths in Ohio are people age 50 and over, and 49% are like 80 and over. So, um, I think 451 deaths statewide in Ohio, 45 in my county, 224 cases in my county. Um, oh, 10 days ago or so, there was 7 or 8 counties that didn't have any cases in them at all. Now there's one county that doesn't have any cases out of the 88 counties in Ohio. So they're going to reopen the state uh, and recall the quarantine, which isn't enforceable anyway, um, on the first. But I mean, that means like businesses are going to start opening up and whatnot. And I think it's a bad move. But according to my friend who I talked to, he's like, yeah, there's a lot of traffic on the roads. And he said when I went fishing at Mosquito Reservoir on Saturday with my son, um, they saw at least 50 other boats out on the water. So people are starting to, disobey the quarantine anyway. So I don't know. I just think it's a bad idea. It's like I was talking about it with my brother, and I was like, he agreed that it was a bad idea, and I'm like, they should let the cases burn out here, and like the people that got it or caught it, let them either get over it or the people or die. Frankly, get over it or die, and then let it burn out, and then like the people that are carriers. Um, that are like sick, but they don't feel sick. Um, I think like 14 days is like how long you have it. Um, I don't know. It seems incautious to me. Like I said before, especially in light of they had a second outbreak in China, like a resurgence of it. So, but anyways, um, I'm like got that down and out feeling, but I can't explain it to non-CRPS people. Like I was talking to, um, I could just call him my real estate agent, but he works with the mental health professionals. So he had to do like a mini psych eval over the phone when had a long conversation with him, with a lot of stuff mixed in. But it's like, well, do you like have positive? Um, there's ways that he's like, there's ways that you can like work your mind around and have positive thoughts. And I'm thinking to myself, you're like a big giant healthy motherfucker that probably doesn't have any chronic pain. I'm like, this is all a pointless conversation. If I was in your shoes, I would be ecstatic. I'm actually a very effervescent, bubbly personality considering the state I'm in. And resilient. So this is really just, I understand this is a formulaic conversation. I'm just going to go ahead and roll with it. And yeah, it's like you can tell somebody like you wake up in pain, you go to sleep in pain, you have neuropathic pain and dysfunction in your limbs and all this stuff. But until you've experienced that, you can't relate to it. It's like I've been getting a lot of headaches lately. Stress headaches, I guess. I don't know. But I don't generally get headaches. So, like, my brother has migraine headaches. It's like, I can't relate to a migraine headache. You're not going to be able to relate to CRPS if you don't have CRPS. I'm not going to relate to somebody that has uh, any other kind of like physical issues, because there's nothing more personal than pain or a physical malady that you suffer from. So, anyways, so I talked to him for like a long time, and he said he would call uh, the Stonehenge Apartments for me today, um, and just check if there's any way around those regulations that we're talking about, that I was talking about. And thank you for the responses on that. I'll mention your names, Betty and Cindy. Um, I don't know, I'm just weird about mentioning names. Um, that only like 20 people watched it, so at this point, I am old hat to most people. So, I've been around here on the internet like fairly frequently, not every day, but frequently for since January of 2018. Ever since the benzo thing became a problem. So nothing. It's not that I don't have anything new to say or anything different to say. It's like, yeah, I know that guy. Like, moving on, and plus, the background and the visual presentation leaves a bit to be desired. Um, so it's none of that's really important to me anyway. And my voice has been especially, growly, like drill sergeant, like a drill sergeant or something. I was gonna say drill sergeanty, but it wouldn't come out. Like, private, you get in line right now. That kind of shit. I'm sorry if that was loud. I have a very loud voice. My voice is either very loud or quiet and sonorous. It's just the way it is. I can remember, like I said, I've said this before, but it's very funny. Somebody said something very funny in a grocery store, and I laughed spontaneously, and then the whole grocery store, like all the people in line and the registers, they all got quiet and looked at me, and I looked around, you know. But there was a guy in front of me that just came from a painting job and had like paint all over him, and the cashier was like, "Woo! I think I can get high just by standing next to you." It's just like a spontaneous moment which you don't get too often, and yeah, I just burst out laughing because I was standing behind him and I was thinking damn near the same thing. Like, okay, this is like huffing paint. I guess the guy was on his lunch break, and he did have like they had like prepackaged sandwiches, so he had like a prepackaged sub and a drink. So I think he was on his break from painting. And anyways, the point is, I be loud when I want to be, and mildly terrifying when I want to be. Um, that's if you don't know, you can push me over with a feather. I actually did get attacked by a mob of kids once, and I mean they didn't knock me over or anything like that, but I don't even know how that started. But that was a rough neighborhood, man. When I got attacked by like a mob of like a dozen kids, start pushing me around and stuff. My brother told me this ridiculous story, and it's like one of them deals where like I know he had to have told me that story before, but I'll share his story. It doesn't really paint him in a bad light, and so I can tell his story. It's just funny. Just give me a second. So he's about 16 years old in school, and he's in the bathroom at the urinal, and he like turns before he zips up. His dick's hanging out, and I don't know what there was like. He said they were like first graders, and I'm like, were they like first graders? And he's just like, well, I don't know. They were little girls. They were like one. to 3. He said they were no more than third graders, but they got together and they wanted to see a pee-pee. So they they went into the boys' bathroom and looked at him. And he was like, he put his stuff away and zipped it up. And he's like, oh man, this is bad. It's like, if these girls tell anybody, it's like, because all you have to do is have like a hint, like these girls spread it around that, they saw. So they're like, however old first to third grade girls are, because the ages in the school went from 1 to 8, as far as first grade to 8th grade. So, anyways, he's chatting up this girl, and this other 16-year-old girl, and this little girl comes up to him and says, "I saw your pee pee. I saw your pee pee." I mean, they were that young that they would say that, and he was like, and the girl that he was trying to talk to impress was like, "What's she talking about?" He was like, "I don't know. I got no idea, And I was like, that. I was thinking, well, you should have just fessed up to the whole thing. And you didn't do nothing. These girls snuck in the boys' bathroom to see a penis. So, anyways, he said he's like, he started walking away, and then like they both started like walking behind him, and saying, "I saw your pee pee. I saw your pee pee." And then like he reached behind when the girl was looking the other way that he was walking with. He reached behind and he mooshed one of the little girls. He said he put his hand on her head and just pushed her down. And then they both shut up. He goes, "Not one of my prouder moments." But it was a Catholic school, which makes it worse because they're weird about that kind of thing. But under any circumstances, that's not a good thing. You don't even want that floating around there, even if it's not your fault and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is peeing in a boy's bathroom. You don't want like a first to second grade girls saying they saw your penis. So, yeah, but he said he reached behind, like, he looked at the girl and the girl was distracted and he reached behind her and like, pushed one of the little girls down to get him to shut up and quit drawing attention to me. Like, you know, it's one of them things where, like, we've known each other our whole lives, obviously. He's like, he had to tell me that story, but I don't remember it, so he doesn't pull it out of his bag very often. You know, it's not a, like I said, it doesn't cast, like he said, it doesn't cast him in the best of lights, but it's funny. Um, so, anyways, what was it? I was talking about after talking about the Brent guy. I might as well use his name. But we had a very long conversation about various things, and he was saying stuff to me that, like, I kind of already know. It's like how you can, like, work your mind around, and he's like, "Do you have anything in your life that's like makes you happy and that you can focus your thoughts on, and stay out of the dark places of thought?" And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, you know. I understand that we don't know each other that well, but yeah, there's darkness, and then there's my life. My life's very, very dark. So of course I do that. I know how to do that. Dog's going ape shit upstairs. I got the fan on medium, but yeah, it's like focus on accentuate the positive, devaluate the negative. I mean, they even make songs about that. So you know. Then he said something like, "Do you ever think about manning a suicide hotline or something like that?" He said, "If you say a lot of people tend to talk to you about their psychological problems anyway." And I'm like, I would be a terrible person for that job because I'm much too logical and reasonable about it, and I'd have a completely different thing. I mean, the only thing I could do is like tell him, like, listen, this is my life story. And then have them console me, and it's like, man, you should be the one killing yourself. I mean, I'd be like, I'd be like the crisis negotiator with somebody on a ledge that goes up there with the bullhorn and says, "Yeah, my child died in a car crash, and my wife left me," and just say a whole bunch of depressing shit, and hope that it turns the focus away from their troubles, and by comparison, they're like, "Oh, my life, my shit ain't that bad." Like, oh, like you like ripped off a toenail and you didn't even freaking feel it. Your feet are that bad, or if they're like in a depression, they'll be like, that's some depressing stuff. That could happen to me. I could get a disease like that. You're supposed to like tell people like reasons that they should keep going, and that you have a lot to live for type of things. It's like, I don't think that really would be suited for that. I would be really suited for like kicking this dog. I mean, that's just honest. If you have a dog torturing you every day by making these noises, um, yeah. Which brings me to another thing to talk about. I, I was going to get to was like I had some inaccuracies in my last video where I talked about the 2.5 thing, which of course me being a math retard is I said $1,000. You'd have to make $3,500. Of course, 2.5 times. I actually tried to make it easy by making it $1,000 and still screwed it up. That would mean you'd have to make $2,500 a month to live there if you paid $1,000 rent. It's 2.5 times whatever the rent is. So yeah. And then I kept making the mistake of saying lease when I wanted to say application. I really haven't been cheating on my. I should stop looking at the ceiling. It's not going to help, you know. Uh, I haven't been cheating on my volume thing, but what I've been doing is like taking one during the day and then two at night to go to sleep. But I did cheat the one night that I woke up at 12:15 and read that I wasn't going to live where I was supposed to live. I was like, I need to go back to sleep. I don't need to sit here and think about the unfairness of the world or the desperateness of my situation, or living in this place that's literally falling apart, you know. And then like I have to make a decision on the rent. I'm starting to think like, I just don't want to take any place just to get out of here. That's what my thinking was. And it's like another inaccuracy in that is like I said that I never had a place where I had 2.5 times the rent as far as income. Now here I have like 2.8 times. Uh, so that wasn't true. But that's only been true since my dad died in 2015. So that's only been like 5 years. The rest of the time, or the rest of my rental history, I've never had 2.5 times the rent as far as my income. But that's been true for 5 years because when my dad died, I got like disabled children who are survivors of veterans. It's really a awkward phrase. Surviving disabled children of veterans. In other words, my dad was in the army. He died, so they bumped up my Social Security quite a bit, and but yeah, I was thinking like, well, I could just like plunk down 3 months worth of rent here on the first, and then just take my time and find a place where I have a situation where I don't want to move again, you know. But I don't know if I can. 3 months is a long time. Time is relative to how you have to spend it. In other words, like you're in sexual ecstasy, or just having a good time, or in general, or whatever. Time flies right on by. But if you're having a miserable time, 3 months is a long damn time. So I was thinking about like, just pay like I owe for April. Come May, I'd have to pay 2 months rent anyway. Why not make it 3 months, and then I'll have this shithole to live in. And in the meantime, I can try to find a place that's suitable where I don't have to worry about people above me howling with howling dogs and stamping feet. And, I don't even know if this place will hold up for 3 months or if my sanity will hold up. I don't know how this guy is blasted out of his mind. I don't even know if the war vet is living over there. This is a 4-unit house. It's not, you can't even call it an apartment building. So, just think if you were living in a house and you had a dog howling above you in the mornings, just howling. And I will ask don't want to talk to the landlord about anything, of course, but I will ask the landlord, does the Chris guy still even live here? The PTS war vet guy, that drunken guy, does he still even live here? I haven't seen him for like ever. He's got like a girlfriend he's pretty attached to. I thought she was living like with her parents or something. I don't know. Maybe they got a place together, or she got a place, and I don't know. She was working at Arby's, so maybe between the two of them, they pooled their income and they moved out of here. I don't know, but I haven't seen or heard from him in over a month, closer to 2 months. So, and he's not quiet. I haven't seen their vehicle parked outside, which he can't drive because he's a drunk. But she drives like a gray minivan. I haven't seen a gray minivan out there in a long time. So I find out the situation on that. This woman coughs, man. It's a weird fucking sound. I mean, it doesn't even sound right. It's like, yeah. So she should be like really careful not to get this COVID thing. But I can save like $700 a month living here and suffering. I could save another $2,000 living here. Just keep on like I've been keeping on, and concentrate on exercise and walking. And I might have to break out the shooter's earplugs. I got this tooth that's starting to bother me, so I'm also probably gonna have to address that. I got my callback referral call from the cardiologist yesterday, and I called him back twice, and I got a busy signal. It's so weird to hear a busy signal nowadays, because everybody's got in-call waiting, and to hear it from a professional place, to hear a busy signal is just weird. I'm old and I don't keep up with the times, so it's like, oh, that's a nostalgic sound. Beep, 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 beep. But why am I getting it from a doctor's office? Why am I not being put on hold? All our operators are currently not available. Please stay on the line. Then you hear the music, But anyways, still having trouble with my throat and talking and whatnot. I don't really talk a lot. I don't have anybody to talk to, so it's not like I'm talking all day and wearing my voice out. So I don't know what that's about. But I was thinking about that, and the idea kind of appeals to me. It's like I can save up more money living here. I don't know how my sanity will hold, but I can also address my physical issues living here. the main thing or the main reason why I wanted to get the fuck out of here as soon as possible, besides the barking dog and the stamping and my hate of the landlord, but the real main reason is dealing with the crazy drunken guy, that he feels betrayed or whatever, because I was like, he's like, oh, you're still being mean to me. It's like his total irrationality. That was like the main reason. It's like summer is coming. He's going to be sitting on the porch, drinking, smoking massive hits off a bong at 10 a.m. like same as he did last summer. And if that's no longer the case, I mean, I can, I guess, deal with what I'm hearing right now. And, you know, I mean, I'm paying a pittance to live here. I'm paying $425. I've talked to my nephew and I asked him how much he pays rent wise, and it's like $640, right? And he's got the same problems that I got, where like he said I can hear a cat walking above me, and he's like we got rid of the loud neighbors, but he's like a great big dude. People in my family tend to run big. I should be 6'4", but I'm missing that vertebrae. And he's 6'3" and about 270, so he's fairly intimidating. His feet are ridiculous. I don't know how big his feet are, but he walks up the steps and knocks on the door and asks him very politely with an expression like this, like, "Will you please be quiet?" And that's pretty much then they're quiet, because I don't know, you know, I always I always thought of him as a little bit like on the wimpy side, but it doesn't matter if you're big, if you're 270 pounds and you're just a big giant dude, you can afford to be wimpy. But yeah, that's how he was as a kid anyway. So, I saw him as a little tiny baby. He had like a Charlie Brown head. When he was a little tiny baby, it was like he had a weird head. He was all balanced and full of energy. And anyways, so in other words, 640. That's like over $200 more than what I'm paying here for the same situation, with annoying, thin walls, the same like not set up for an apartment type of situation. Um, this neighborhood really isn't that bad. Like I said, there's one guy who's like a crazy person, who's a thief, and the drunken crazy guy that lives here, he turned me on to him. But the first time I saw him, he was stealing the neighbor's Christmas lights. Like, he had like, they weren't even Christmas lights. They were like party lights, because they have a deck out there. But they're really Christmas lights, but they're the ones that have the little cone shaped things. And I watched him going around like taking it off there, and I didn't know if he was supposed to be doing. I would have yelled at him if I knew he was stealing. But then I was sitting out on the porch when I was foolishly hanging around smoking cigarettes with the war vet guy um, last summer, and he was like, "Oh, that's it. That guy. I watched him steal stuff, because all he would do is sit on the porch. And he's like, oh, I watch him. He just goes around looking for stuff to steal, and mostly stupid stuff." And I was like, I just saw him like the other day stealing them Christmas lights. And he goes, yeah, I saw that. I seen him. He came around the corner and he had them all balled up in his hand. So, this isn't the worst neighborhood in the world. There's just a crazy thief guy that comes through here, and it's city. In other words, I can stand on my porch and hit 8 houses with a rock. And there's a bunch of, greenery in the back there. And if I could wake up at a decent hour, and I should go sit out there in the sun. But yeah, I've been having trouble sleeping. But I don't really have to see the landlord, and he doesn't want to see me. So, I was thinking about like how I wanted to play the whole rent situation. And you know, with the COVID, if it wasn't for the COVID thing, I would put my rent in escrow and make him fix everything in here. But that would just be aggravation for me because I'd have to see him and interact with him when I want to kill him. And I have construction going through, and like the wiring's all fucked up in this place. The ceiling fan don't work. The light in the living room don't work. There's of course the holes in the walls, the windows that are collapsed. They don't stay open. They're just like guillotines. And like the bathroom cabinet that's crumbling, and there's like a million things wrong in this place that he'd have to fix. I mean, I would do that just to be annoying, but with the COVID thing going on, I'm not gonna do that. Um, yeah, I have to make a decision about that because now that I saw that place, the Stonehenge place, I'm kind of like, I don't want to live in a place where it's like your multi-layered apartment buildings where, I want I want that. I want like an area with some greenery around it and nobody above me and nobody below me. I want to live there. I want to live in a place like that. Where this dog, the whole video, this dog's been doing this. You probably can't hear it, but the whole video. Um, Before the video, the dog was doing it. So, guy, like I said, there's four units in this house, and the guy in the wheelchair is, I don't know if he's hearing that or not. He doesn't like to hear dogs bark, but it's over top of me. It's not over top of him, and he's on really good terms with the owner of the dog because she goes to the store and stuff for him and brings him stuff, presumably cigarettes and God knows what else. I've been smelling a lot of cigarettes around here, but I mean, maybe that's what chased the uh, Chris guy away, the PTSD guy. Should I just call him Chris and make it easier? Yeah, I guess. Not trying to get on his side, but Chris or the drunk we'll use. Um, there's a lawnmower. What would mornings be without the melodious sound of a mechanical? Wait a minute, that's an airplane. Airplanes I can deal with. I thought it was a lawnmower at first. I'm so conditioned, but that's actually an airplane going by. But yeah, how much of this is benzo irritability? I don't know, but I wouldn't like it. But I used to be able to tolerate. I've lived in the city before, and I used to be able to tolerate a bunch of noise, and things used to like roll off of me before the CRPS got much worse in the last 5 years, and I could walk, and before I had the leg thing, and before my life just totally went to shit. Um, I used to have like infinite patience, and things just didn't really bother me. But I'm not that person anymore. And not having any teeth is very annoying. And I actually could have saved these two teeth right here, but I wanted the money instead. I figured it was a bad investment. And as far as like getting old or whatever, to have a 32-year-old tell you to look on the bright side, it's like, yeah, when I was 32, I used to look on the bright side of things too. So that's really not understanding. There's a big difference between 32, which is like the height of your manhood. You're not young anymore. You have all the power, the physical powers you had of your as a 20-year-old, but you have the added wisdom. That's like the full flowering of manhood as far as I'm concerned. It's like the 30 to 35-year-old age, you know. It's like you get to 52, come talk to me. Then come talk to me about looking on the bright side and realigning the way you think. I don't say these things because they're not polite. It's a great guy. He's trying to help. It's just these are just things that you learn as you live, and you can't be expected to know these things. It's like Yeah, when I was 32 and had CRPS and still couldn't urinate on my own without a catheter and still had all them physical problems, I was still able to walk for miles, bicycle for miles, as strong as an ox, go fishing whenever I wanted to go fishing. Um, just not necessarily at the places I wanted to go fishing, and didn't care about being poor, and had hopes and dreams and all that stuff. Is like, yeah. So, though no young people will be listening to that, don't do that as a young person. Don't tell an older person, look on the bright side. Or somebody that's past 50. Especially in a climate where like 87% of the deaths to a pandemic in your state are people 50 and over. Death holds no terror for me. It's like, just, it would be a relief. I don't, whatever waits for me on the other side, I don't fear. I fear waking up in the morning. Uh, I have been, the sad part is I have like a bunch of interesting stuff I could tell you about that I heard, but I was sworn to secrecy over it, so I can't talk to you about it. It's all very interesting, and it does kind of involve me indirectly. But I was trying to contact this person yesterday, and I just haven't been able to get a hold of them for a while now. But there's a bunch of things going on that make me glad that I'm isolated. That's as much as I'll say about it. Um, yeah, that's much as I can say about it. And I don't think, yeah, the dog's quiet now for the first time. I wonder how long that's going to last. Nope, there they go. Dogs do not like being left alone. They're pack animals, and they really don't like being left alone when they're young. And this dog is not a year old yet. It's approaching a year old. Um, I remember it was sometime during last summer when it was a little puppy, and she was showing it off and saying its name was Precious. Precious. Oh, teeth, why hast thou forsaken me? And jumped out of my head. I tried to take care of you as best as I could. And why did you leave me here all alone? I used to have teeth and be able to enunciate words, but you found another way out and you left. No, that's not how that goes. I don't know. That's a country song. Where are you tonight? Why did you leave me here all? No, I think it's off of Hee Haw or something. I don't know. Hee Haw was like one of the few places you could see titties on TV when I was a kid. So, I didn't like country music particularly, but I like titties. So, it's a different entertainment world now. The Hee Haw honeys, like whatever. Uh, yeah, that's a Hee Haw song I was singing. I guess that counts as a country song, but not a real country song. I was trying to do a parody involving my teeth, but it didn't really work out. Like I say, being spontaneous, it's like Major League Baseball that I should be watching right now. I love that, like waking up in the morning and drinking coffee and watching a nice, slow, leisurely baseball game in the quiet. And you can fast forward the when you bought it on the computer, you could fast forward it, so it wouldn't take all day, and like baseball tends to do. And so yeah, that's yeah. The really sad part, and I put like the horror from Apocalypse Now, but they actually have like Major League Baseball players, videos and they're live stream videos of Major League Baseball players playing like video games of baseball. In other words, they're professional baseball players, and you're watching them play video games of their profession of playing baseball. I'm like, oh my god, this is horrible. You know, it's just a horrible state of affairs. Uh, yeah, I really don't know if I can live here much longer with this dog barking though. There's, I just have to wake up and put earplugs in my ears, because it's very annoying. Maybe she died. That's why the dog won't shut up. I don't know. I didn't hear her leave this morning, but I didn't wake up very early. I woke up at 8:30, and maybe she had somewhere to go, or she's donating plasma so she can score some money for a rock, which she used to do. I don't know. According to this guy over here, I don't. I mean, I never seen her smoke crack. I know she donated plasma on a regular basis to supplement her income. Uh, but it, um, yeah, I don't know if I can hang here too much longer. Maybe I should just like get out of here and move somewhere else, and but then I just have to move. If I didn't find a situation that I could live with, I just have to go through the trouble of moving again, move somewhere else, and I have to buy a bed. I have to furnish a place, and I mean, I can't really afford a furnished apartment, and I wouldn't want to lay on. I'm not 20 years old anymore where I don't give a fuck about anything. So I wouldn't want to lay on somebody else's bed. So I've rented places where like there was already a bed there. And yeah, that was like the place that I rented off my uncle, and they kept the rent at like 225 for me for like ever. And then like I lived there for so many years. I think 15 years. So I didn't give a fuck, man. I was young and healthy. I didn't care about nothing. Nothing got nothing got under my skin, and um, so they raised the rent all of $30 over the period of 15 years. I had special uh, re- nepotism rights, I guess. But see, I didn't have any money. I had 422 as an income, and I was paying 225 rent, and that's like with all utilities included. It's like the cheapest you could live, and bringing it back around to the 2.5 times the rent as far as income. That's not even two times. You know, if you 225 times two is 450. I had 422 to live on. I was just saving checks because I would get two separate checks from the government, and I had like 17 checks where I would just pay for the rent out of one check, and then was just pocketing the other check. And so at one point, I'm like, I had this envelope with all these checks in it, and I asked my uncle, the World War II vet, I was like, you think you could cash these checks for me? Because I was real dysfunctional. Nobody taught me anything. I didn't have a bank account until I don't know how old I was. So I didn't have you know, I didn't have a bank account. I'm trying to remember if I used check cashing places or cash my checks at the, because you can't just sign over a social security check. So I don't remember how that all worked. But I do remember like giving him like 17 checks, and he went into the credit unit and came out with like I don't know, $3,000 or something like that, and say, well, here you go. And him being him, and he was, you know, a blabao type personality, and you know, he was the guy that was like, I'm not going to use a seatbelt. I predate seatbelts, therefore they have no jurisdiction over me. So he never belted up. He never would wear a seatbelt once they came up with the seatbelt law. And he's like, when I was driving before they had seatbelts in cars. And he's like, mm-mm. And his son would ask. I was only there for one exchange, but his son would like formulaically ask him, who was a policeman, you know, is his, and that's his dad. He would like, you know, he'd buckle up and he'd look at his dad, and his dad would look back at him and just, you know, it was like a joke between them, I guess. I don't know. But he was like, you could buckle up, you know, or something like that. But so it got to the point where like he would just look at him, and then his dad would look back at him, and you know, you weren't telling my Uncle Joe what to do. This just wasn't gonna happen, not unless you had a gun. Not unless his son would have pulled his service revolver on him. Even then, he probably wouldn't listen to him. He's like, man, I was getting shot at by the Japanese in World War II in the Pacific Theater. It's like, is like, I've had guns pointed at me before. I don't care. But yeah, uh, yeah, I find shit like that amusing. You know, that guy was telling me like, think about stuff that makes you like happy, or think about positive things. I just think about shit in life that's funny. You know, I mean, that guy was funny. That that's the uncle that I went fishing with that just broke out in song while he was fishing. And he also was the guy I asked to fix a leaky faucet or something. Like I said, I got a leaky faucet. I was hoping. I said something like, I was hoping you'd look at this leaky faucet. And he was underneath a car on one of them roller things, and he rolled out from underneath the car, and he looked at me and he said, "You want me to get you a prostitute?" And you know, for a minute there, I was like, and then I knew he was fucking with me. And yeah, he was a funny dude, man. He was the guy that tried to make a, in the middle of like a war where you're getting shot at. He's getting shot. He's doing an island fighting with the Japanese. He got everybody's raisins, rations, and he's the guy that put them in a coffee can and tried to. He's alcoholic, so he tried to make raisin wine and get it to ferment, and so he would sneak off and go check on it, and then he got caught, and then his commanding officer was like, we're out here trying not to get killed by the Japanese, and you're fucking around with a goddamn still? Seriously? You know, his commanding officer was like, couldn't believe it. And he's like, we're trying, you're in the middle of a fucking war, and you're screwing around. Because he had to explain why he got caught sneaking out and coming back. And, you know, yeah, that shit amuses me. Like, I love stories, of course. And, like, the story of me almost bleeding to death is funny as hell to me. And, it's probably horrifying to other people, but shit like that is funny to me. So that's the kind of thing that I find amusing. Not the positive things in life. Think about the positive things about your life. Yeah, that's not going to be too easy. A 32-year-old dude who doesn't have a chronic pain-generating disease, and you know, who can pee on his own, and looks like he can lift a fucking Toyota, man. I can't. My hands are big, man, and when I shake hands with him, I can't get my hand around his hand. You know, it's like he's not that big, maybe 6'3" or something like that, but his hands are like ridiculous, man. It's like the first time I shook his hand, it was like this. I could get my hand around his hand. My dad used to say his father or his grandfather had hands like coal shovels. He said that you could put two of his hands together, and he didn't have small hands, and it equaled one of his. He could lay his hands down on his father or grandfather's palm, and they would barely cover his palm. But yeah, that guy's got the coal shovel hands, the gorilla mitts, and yeah, I mean, shit like that amuses me, but you know, not amusing enough to make up for the basic horror that is my life. And that feeling of being trapped, you know, the feeling of, I hear heavy boots full of lead, feeling their victim full of dread. So it's, you either get the dog barking or you get the stomping. So, you know, bases are always covered as far as noise. That one morning that I was on here, I was like, whoa, it's freakishly quiet, and then somebody starts up outside with a lawnmower, so, it's just city living. Um, there's at least some grass around here for people to cut, but they have like very small yards. But there's so many houses packed together so tightly that somebody is always cutting their grass, it seems like. That's why when I heard that airplane, I was like, oh, there goes a lawnmower. And, yeah. So I just try to talk my way out of it, talk my way out of whatever funk I'm in. Like, I woke up in a particularly bad mood, and I like to think about things that are amusing, like, I saw your pee-pee, I saw your pee-pee. I mean, that's a ridiculous story, and it's like, it's kind of hard for me to fathom that. I guess those girls didn't have brothers or whatever to spy on. I mean, I don't know what the hell the deal was, but that was his story. And yeah, he definitely did not make that up. You don't make up a story that has you pushing down a first grader by her head just to get her to shut up because you're trying to chat up a girl when you're 16 years old. Like, she's not looking right now. They were like following him around saying that shit. And he's let her reach behind and pushed her down. Pushed the little girl down. Yep, I pushed the little girl down. Sue me. She shouldn't have been bothering me. But yeah, I'm just thinking that's not something that would have ever occurred to me, like that a first grade to third grade girl, two girls would get together and have enough stones to be ironic to go and like sneak in the boys' bathroom in order to see what a penis looks like. I mean, that's just very strange. Um, but yeah, I don't really yeah. There's no hope for my situation. My situation's like utterly hopeless. I can only hope that it gets better. It's never going to be good. I'm going to be miserable, suffer, and my body's going to continue to deteriorate, and I'm going to die. That's the facts, man. That's the way it is. I can hope for, like, they can maybe do something with my knee where I don't have to worry about falling every freaking second, and it's not so painful to walk. That's about it. The rest of it's kind of set in stone. CRPS, uh, nothing they can do about that. It's incurable. And as far as like dealing with the pain, the only thing that does any good, it takes away who you are. You're talking about opiates and heavy opiates, or even the Neurontin stuff. You're talking about huge doses of Neurontin, and it really doesn't do a whole lot. I told the guy on the phone yesterday. He's like, "You don't take anything for the pain?" I'm like, "No." And I said, He said, "What about this, this?" And he mentioned Neurontin. I was like, "Man, I got enough of that stuff here to kill an elephant." I got like ridiculous amounts of Neurontin, and I think they might still be prescribing it for me. I don't know. But I have like a giant bottle full of it, and then I have other bottles of it. I just don't take it. I don't like, I don't like medications, drugs, whatever you want to call them. So I just try to, you know, I just live in pain. That's all. I mean, I'd rather like have the pain. Also, it clouds your mind. I mean, I don't know if you're in pain right now or whatever. You're not going to be as sharp thinking wise when you're in pain. I used to be a pretty bright guy, 10 years ago, before I moved in here. And then especially 5 years ago. Well, even after I moved in here, I was a pretty bright guy. But Since CRPS has progressed, I've gotten progressively stupider. And I just like pinch that finger that I wrenched, which is no longer funny colors, but still hurts, and the knuckle is kind of still big. I don't know if it looks big, but it would be this knuckle right here. Maybe it looks a little bigger than the other knuckles. I don't know, but it's not funny colors anymore. But I just like nervously squoze it. That's a word that a Ronald Reagan famously invented, squoze instead of squeezed. But yeah, I guess I'm done. I'm using myself at your expense. Um, trying to think of silly things and complaining about silly things and whatever. I did correct some of the mistakes that I made as far as in that video, um, where I found out like that doesn't seem constitutional to me somehow, because basically, like, I, I I said I feel personally discriminated against because I'm on disability, which um, the guy that's my real estate agent guy was like, I don't think it's anything personal, and I'm like, that's not what I meant. I'm like, I mean, anybody on disability is not going to be able to afford anything there because of the 2.5 times rule, because they do not give you that much money on disability to live with, so they're like weeding out the cripples along with the poor people. So this guy makes he makes like $500 more. He asked me once, how do you live on that? You know? And it's like, well, first of all, I don't waste it all with online gambling at poker. That's his hobby, is online poker. And I don't have grandkids to blow money on because he buys like expensive gifts for his grandkids. And these are things I'm thinking, of course. But he asked me how much Social Security for disability I got, and gets like 1,700. So I'm thinking he could afford like the cheaper apartments there, like the 570 apartments. Um, yeah, he could afford those. In fact, because yeah, they come out to around $1,400. He wouldn't have much left to live on. You know, he'd have to give up his online poker, but he could afford to get in there under their rules. But he wouldn't have enough money to eat. He wouldn't have. He really couldn't afford to live there. I could afford to live there because I'm getting, food's a huge expense. Um, you know how I don't know where you live at. It depends. Uh, grocery wise, but groceries, you expect to spend $200 a month on groceries is the way it works. Minimum. Uh, I don't eat much, and I was spending $200 a month on groceries. So, um, yeah. So he really couldn't. He could get in there underneath the laws of the application form and sign a lease, but his application might go through, but he would not be able to afford to live there. So, um, yeah, so I feel like it's discriminatory against disabled people along with poor people. And I didn't know they could do that, you know. And it says like it's funny because it's like part of the same uh, um, introductory thing to the application. We do not discriminate on the basis of ethnicity, race, or disability. It's like bullshit. You're Nobody living on disability is going to be able to afford your place. Therefore, you are discriminating on the basis of disability if you're talking about 2.5 times. Well, you get the point. Why am I talking to you like you're not bright people? I apologize. But I'm about done talking. My voice was crap when I started. It's getting worse, and it feels worse. So I'm going to take a sip of coffee I had to tell you that I saw your PP story because it's just funny. And yeah, I like when he said, "Not one of my better moments," but even back then, I mean, it's a different, like, this is a down note to end on, of course, but it's like when I had my electric bike out some years ago when I could still ride it, and this little kid, like 5 year old, was fascinated by it because he never saw an electric bike before, and he saw me like zoom up on it, and he's like, how'd you do that? How do you how does that work? Like, how can you make a bike move without pedaling it? And all, he was asking me all these questions, and I'm just looking around for an adult. Like, is there any adults around here? I was like, oh, okay, that must be his dad walking up the hill. And I'm like, oh, it's an electric bike. It just propels itself. And he's like, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you later. And I just ran. It's like little kids are something to be run from now. But you don't you don't even want to have that put out there. That some little girl snuck in. Even if they did it and it's their fault, you just don't want that out there. It's like that would really be bad in this day and age because you would have to, what's that Me Too movement? I don't know. I don't keep up with social trends, but it's like you're supposed to like believe um, people that say that something happened like categorically, if so if yes, the circumstances don't matter. You were old enough to know better than to be in a situation where little girlies saw your pee-pee. Even if it was all their fault and you're minding your own business, relieving yourself in the bathroom. And it's like, if they could make trouble with these stupid ideas these people came up with blanket belief. Like you're supposed to believe people just because they say something concerning certain topics. Why I am getting into this, I don't know. I should have got out of this quicksand. I should have just stuck a toe. I'd already had a toe in this quicksand, but I decided to put my whole damn foot in it now. Um, but yeah, I'm saying that back then that was bad. That was in probably the early '80s or whatever. But nowadays, that's like thanks to beautiful programs like SVU, Special Victims Unit, and stuff like that. And it's just like you got my heart. What's my heart doing? Mellow out. You've been good here lately. Yeah, since I bragged about my heart on the internet, it's been kind of messing with me. So I'm gonna go and yeah, yeah, 32-year-old guy. You ever like lay there and just like have your heart mess up and have to try to relax and hopefully it goes back in rhythm? It's like, what good thoughts can I sit and brew to counteract that? Yeah, chronic pain, degenerative disease. No, yeah, it's a nice philosophy. I basically just like try to stay out of a depression, think about things that are amusing, keep myself like intellectually stimulated by thinking about things like the way the world has changed, like ideas like the Me Too movement, where you're like supposed to believe people about a specific subject categorically and not investigate it. And the whole idea of like just you can accuse somebody of a thing and like throw it out there, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not. I use the Lizzie Borden example all the time. Lizzie Borden never took an axe and never gave anybody 40 whacks. She went to court. There is irrefutable evidence that she never killed nobody, and they acquitted her. But it doesn't matter because that information was put out there. It became so popular they would call it a meme nowadays. And so a lot of people don't know that Lizzie Borden never had anything to do with the murder of her parents, and it was most likely a handyman, an itinerant handyman that did it. But they don't know that she was acquitted. They never found any evidence substantiating uh, even like the hint of her doing it. They had nothing, you know. But like if those little girls were like, change their story up and be like, we were just on the playground and he whipped it out, it's like all over for my brother back in 1980. He's in a fucking mess. And like, think about that now, you know. If say those two little girls go home and they're laughing and giggling about it and talking about it with their friends and saying like, "Oh my God, it was so huge and ugly. It looked like some kind of weird elephant's trunk or something like that." And then like their mom heard them and they're like, "What are you talking about?" And then they would like fess up and then they would make up a story that would relieve their culpability about like going into the boys' room and seeing the elephant trunk and say that they saw the elephant trunk in the wild because the elephant come charging at them. He just made up a story, and then it gets back on my brother, and then my brother's got the police, talking to him like even at the age of 16, um, saying like, these girls are saying that they saw your. Are you flashing little girls? Is that your thing? You little creep. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So yeah, that whole thing about categorical belief on certain topics is just retarded and stupid. And that scenario that I just made up very easily could play out because one thing kids know and kids learn very fast is what matters in this world is who's to blame. Is blame is very important to children and adults too, but especially the children. It's like who can we put the blame on? You know. So that scenario could actually play out where they would be overheard talking about it by their mother. The mother questions them. They don't want to admit the wrongdoing about going into the boys' room, so they make up a story, which children are very good at, and you know, say that he flashed us on the playground, and that's why we were talking about this. Who is this guy? And then the police. That all could have played out that way, you know. So there's your unsavory topic for today. So if you, but the real world is unsavory, and people don't make any damn sense. And I guess that's why life is funny. Is even um, things that are negative and bad, like I don't know, me cutting my leg and almost bleeding to death. To me, was very funny. The circumstances surrounding it, I found very funny. The fact that I'm going to the emergency room and getting stopped by the police while I'm essentially bleeding to death. Even though I forgot that, it's hard to tell a story. Storytelling's an art, and it's very hard to keep it moving, but have all the salient details in there. And one of the details that I missed is, of course, you should have assumed this, if I may speak for you, but I readjusted the bandage. I just didn't let myself bleed. I readjusted it and tried to stop the bleeding as best I could. And I've told that part of the story poorly, but I still had blood all over me, and I still got stopped by the police on the way to the emergency room because the car I was in matched the description of a violent crime which involved somebody getting injured very badly. I believe was the phrase that the police used, and the car was seen was fleeing the bar, and it was a violent crime, and that's all they would say about it because cops do not tend to elaborate. They don't want to give you the power of information, which I'll skip around and say that like when they came to my door and they showed me a picture of a guy, and the guy is next door in the apartment where Roy lives now, but a woman named Karen was living there, and that was her boyfriend, and he was right over there, and he had just come in right before the cops, and the cops were showing me a picture of him, and I asked him, what did he do? And they're like, that's really not your concern. And I'm like, the hell it ain't, because he's hearing me talk right now. And if he cut off somebody's head with a rusty saw, is a lot different than if you're looking for him because he robbed the store. you know, you know what I mean. So cops do not like fill in the. They don't give out any more information than they feel is necessary. And yeah, so they did not elaborate on the nature of the violent crime, whether it involved just bad beating or whether knives were involved, but guaranteed blood was involved, and guaranteed I was covered in blood, and guaranteed if they made me get out of the car, there would have been a problem. All I could have done would be like beg for mercy and be like, look, I've already lost a lot of blood. I need to go to the emergency room. You can handcuff me to the bed in the emergency room, but get me to an emergency room. But while all that was transpiring, I'm still leaking a little bit because I just had my duct tape makeshift bandage. I just like readjusted it and put it back over the wound and tried to tighten it up. I didn't even take time to like rewrap it with tape or anything. I was just kind of holding my hand on it, my bloody hand on it, and you know, yeah. So telling stories is really an art, you know, unless you practice them. And I obviously don't practice them. Unless you practice telling a story or you told a story a number of times already. It's really hard to tell a story on the fly. Keep it moving, but keep all the necessary details in there. And definitely don't want to throw too many details in there because it makes the story too long and distracts from the central points of the story. So, but that's what you can do when you write, as opposed to being an oral storyteller, is you can think all that out when you write. But when you're an oral storyteller, you can't pause in the middle of your story and say, well, do I really need to say this part? Or like, wait a minute, okay, I should throw this part in here because this is important. You know what I'm saying. Like I said, I have not been giving you folks adequate recognition for your intelligence this morning, and my voice is turning horrible. So I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.